Hey, this is Kay from Highway Hypodermics with 7 Question Sunday, and today we will be talking about traveling with a family and homeschooling. What are some of the pros and cons in traveling with a spouse? Well, some of the pros is that you will always have someone to help you out with logistics and preparing for the assignment. And you always need help with the maintenance and stuff, especially if you're an RV. If you're traveling in an RV, it's great to have somebody to help you hook up the sewer hose, right? That's the husband's job. Anyway, it's just a lot easier with two of you working on things. If you're moving in and out of an apartment, then you have somebody to help you carry stuff in. If you're lucky like me, you will have a butler and a teacher. My husband, I haven't. He takes care of all the household duties. He does laundry, does the cooking, cleaning. Well, cooking's kind of a half and half deal because I love to cook, but he does a lot of that, takes care of the laundry. So it's really nice to have him around. Another thing is you have someone to do things with on your days off. Yeah, it's okay if you want to go do something by yourself. Like personally, I love to play golf by myself, but it's also nice to have somebody there to go with you to do things on assignments and to go out and explore. You always have somebody to walk your dog whenever you're at work or feed the cats, in my case, and you are not as lonely as if you were alone. So that's some of the pros of traveling with a spouse. Now, some of the cons, not being able to find work. I know it's a lot easier now with Uber and Lyft, and they can always do pizzas. I know this may seem unfair, but for your spouse, I would go in and whenever he does job interviews, just don't tell them necessarily that you're going to be gone in 3 months because you guys may stay 6 months, you may stay 9 months. You never know how long. So I wouldn't give a time frame of saying, hey, I'm looking for a job for the next 3 months. You're just looking for a job. It can get a little crowded, especially if you're in an RV or a small apartment or an extended stay. It really can get crowded if you're, quote, attached to the hip. If every time you turn around, somebody's right there, that can get a little nerve wracking after a while. Again, that's why I go play golf, is to get away and have time for myself. You just got to find that right balance. And if your spouse is a traveler, then a problem that you might have is finding travel assignments that are in the same city or in the same location. I know one friend I have right now, I think there's an hour between or two. Anyway, there's a little bit of a distance between her and her husband traveling their assignments, and so they each have she lives in the RV, he lives in an apartment, and then whenever they can, they get together in between, but they're still like an hour or two away from each other, which, for one assignment or two a year, that might not be a bad idea, or you might have to do that. If your spouse doesn't have something to do, then sometimes they can get lonely and even depressed. So that's something that you need to be aware of. Is your spouse one of those who can go out and find things to do? It's really handy at an RV park because, they can hang out with the guys or whatever. But anyway, make sure that he has something to do whenever you discuss this. And then if you work nights, I know it really bothers some husbands if they feel like that they have to be absolutely stone deaf quiet. And for me, once I get to sleep, I'm gone. There's not too many things that are going to wake me up. But I know some people are light sleepers, and that does present a con to having somebody else with you. What are some of the pros and cons in traveling with children? Now, with the children, the pros are obviously in that they experience different things in different places, and they learn by hands-on and experiences. They don't just read everything out of a book. My son, we went to a lot of the battlegrounds in Mississippi, and in Alabama, we went to Montgomery and or Birmingham or wherever the battleship is. That's where we went. So, and in Florida, we went to see the Everglades and all of those experiences down there. You don't, with your children with you, one good thing is that you don't miss all their milestones. If you have a real young one, you don't miss their first crawling and their first walking or their first tooth because you have them there. And your children are also with you all the time, so you don't have a chance to miss them because they're with you. On the con side, you don't have any peace and quiet because they're with you. So, but there needs to be a balance there. If you're a single parent, it can be hard to find safe daycare, but a lot of people now use care.com or babysitting.com and have had some good results there. Some of the bigger hospitals even have in-house daycare, so you might look for something like that. If you don't feel like you can adequately homeschool your child, then there's a possibility that you might have to go ahead and put them in public schools, which may be a con because you may have to stay there for the full 9 months during school, or you can split it to where they spend the first semester before Christmas at one school, and then you start a new assignment in January, and they switch schools in January, and then you take another assignment in the winter. So you can do the 3 assignments. And even though your contract says only, 13 weeks, a lot of the times the hospitals will work with you on getting different lengths of contracts. Especially if you explain to them that you're traveling with your family and that and that they are in school and that you'd like to move at this time. Housing can be very hard to find if you have a large family. Usually not so much if you have 1 or 2 kids, but I know a couple of travelers who travel with up to 4 kids. And they did that in an RV. Now, a lot of the time they had a 4-bunk system in the back of the RV. It was a big fifth wheel. And they spent all their time outside doing their homeschool stuff on the park bench. So that was how they survived having 4 kids in an RV. With the housing, with the apartments, you can get a 2 to 3 bedroom apartment, which usually isn't that big of a problem, but still traveling with over 4 children is a little bit more difficult. Not totally impossible, but it is a little bit difficult. And insurance can run you a pretty penny if you have family to put on there. When it's tell you what, it's just getting ridiculous with just a nurse, and even a spouse can drive it up to $500 a month. So, once you add your family in there, then it's really going to bump up that insurance cost. But, that's another thing that you're just going to have to weigh out when you weigh out whether or not traveling with a family is for you and your family or not. What about housing? We kind of touched on this. There's corporate housing and a motel and extended stay. If it's just you and your spouse, then these options are a great way to go with the corporate housing. I've stayed in the motel. I've done the corporate housing with my spouse. It's not too bad. In fact, I had a child whenever I was in the motel, and that really wasn't too bad either. It was really nice when we got the 1-bedroom suite, so that we had the bedroom to where, since I work nights, I could go into the bedroom and close the door and they wouldn't bother me out in the living room. You can also find your own housing on Airbnb and Craigslist. Craigslist, you really need to be careful on that because there's a lot of scammers on there. Airbnb and Vacation Rental by Owner, VRBO, are actually the safest places to go. And there's also corporate housing by owner. There's a lot of Facebook housing sites out there that are a great possibility in finding rooms. The rooms that you find on Facebook are usually for you and your spouse. They're just rooms. You might consider those if you have a family. then I would look at the Facebook housing sites to see if you can find a home that where you rent out the whole home instead of just a room. Now, of course, the best way, I believe, if you're going to do this long term, then you definitely need to get an RV. With an RV, they come in all shapes and sizes. They have all kinds of bunk houses now. So, it's a really a great way to go if you're going to do this for any length of time. What about daycare? I'd start looking up daycares in the area right whenever you are considering an assignment. Look up to see if they have daycares and their reviews to see if you can find a good spot for your children. You might look at, as I said, babysitting.com or care.com is some really great places to look. Read the reviews on Google and Angie's List, and on care.com, they have some great reviews because you want to know if you're putting your child in a safe place. You can also talk to, call the hospital floor and see if somebody has some suggestions, or ask the manager when you do your interview. One thing that we always did was we found a church family and a good teen group to put our son in whenever we went to a travel assignment. And we've been Lutheran, we've been Catholic, we've been Nazarene, we've been Baptist. So it really didn't matter to us what denomination it was, just that our child had someplace to go with a positive influence. When you call these daycare centers, see if you can get a few names of parents that can give you a reference for the place. And you might look at this new app called Brightwheel. It helps you find daycares. Many daycares have a waiting list, so you need to be aware of that. And finally, one of the easiest places to find daycare is in RV parks, because RV parks do have a list of resources there for working places, because a lot of the RV parks now are not only retired people in a lot of places, but there's working families that just can't afford housing. So you can look for some daycare resources there. What are some school options? You can put your kids into public school, and you can travel, with each semester, with the fall semester and then the spring semester, and then have a summer assignment. There's some people that just keep their kids in the same school for 9 months, and then they'll switch to another assignment during the summer. The biggest thing that we did was we tried homeschooling. Now, I cheated this because my bachelor's degree is in education, science education. Before I was a nurse, I was a certified junior high science teacher. So I kind of came at this naturally. So I would make the care plans, and then I'd go to bed, and my husband would make sure that our son got his homework or his schoolwork done during the day. And that worked out perfect for us. Kids nowadays are learning by computer. My son personally wasn't into that. He wanted to use the workbooks and learn by book. So you just need to do whatever your child is more comfortable at learning. So yes, they have some great online programs. They also have some great book programs. We used Abeka and LifePaks. And then we have what's called unschooling. Now, this is probably the most controversial thing, in that you teach them by teaching them things that affect their everyday lives. So you teach them about the, science class, maybe going for a walk and picking up leaves and looking at leaves, or looking at rocks, or, there's all kinds of things that you can do on a day-to-day basis that teaches your child. Everyday math, just whatever if there's something that you're adding up, well, then have them help you. So it's just everyday things is what people are taught with homeschooling. Go on lots of field trips if you're doing it that way also. In fact, if you are homeschooling your child and you go on a field trip, we went to Point Reyes in California, and I decided to hike with my son 300 stairs down to the lighthouse. Well, once we got down the 300 stairs to the lighthouse was closed. But the park ranger was right there, and he said, son, aren't you supposed to be in school? And he says, well, I am in school. He says, I'm homeschooled, and this is my field trip for today. And the park ranger says, well, then okay, come on, I'll let you in. And so the park ranger actually let us in, opened up the lighthouse, and we went into the lighthouse, and he took us around and gave us a history lesson and a lesson all about the lighthouse. So, don't be afraid to ask park rangers, to show you around and to do some educational stuff with your children. What are some of the programs used now in homeschooling? As I mentioned before, we did Life Packs, which is a student-paced workbooks that they do at home. This is by Alpha Omega Publishing. It is a Christian curriculum, but this is just an option that you have. There's also Horizons, which is a teacher-led curriculum, and then they have Switched on Schoolhouse, which is a digital. So this is done on the computer. You have discs. We tried this one, and you have disc, and the child does all their work on the local computer. You don't have to have internet access for this. And then it's computer-based homeschool, and it goes through grades through 3 to 12. Now, Monarch is an online Christian homeschool curriculum that offers automatically grading and record keeping, and this one is, as I said, online, so you do have to have internet access for that program. Textbooks we've got from Abeka Publishing and Bob Jones Publishing. Also, if you will look around in the larger cities, we found an outlet in Oklahoma City to where it was a textbook outlet. So the textbooks that the schools didn't use anymore, they sent them to this warehouse, and you could go in there and you could get school books for like $5-10 a piece. I mean, it was very economical. There's a lot of people now are using Connections Academy, so that would be a great option. And it is K through 12. It's a public school system, but it's online. It's all on the computer and online. There's a great big resource list at homeschool.com/resources. And of course, I'll put all of these links down in the program notes. Do I follow my state rules or the assignment state rules? The state rules is kind of a catch-22 because you have to follow your home state rules because that's where your permanent home is. So like whenever we left to do travel nursing, we were in the state of Arizona. The state of Arizona stated that we had to write a declaration to the school board that we were pulling our son out of school and that he was going to be homeschooled. Had to be notarized and all of that. So that's what we did. That's all we had to do for Arizona. So what you need to do first thing is look up the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and I'll give you that link also. And look on there, and it has a list of your home state rules. Now, some of the other state laws you have to abide by at your assignment. Just like whenever we went to Tennessee, we had to follow the Tennessee rules and the fact that we were in an apartment, and it's all related to your housing. Because we were in an apartment, and the apartment rules stated that for us to keep our son at the apartment during school hours, then we had to have an affidavit written to the local school stating that we had a child in the apartment and that he was being homeschooled. Now, another catch-22 for Tennessee is that they require a parent to have a bachelor's degree before they can homeschool their child. So luckily I did have my bachelor's in science education, so we were okay. But you just need to follow the different rules for some of the states. Another thing that was really weird for us in homeschool, probably our toughest time, was when my son turned 15 and a half, 16, and he wanted to get his driver's license. So we were actually in Mississippi at the time, and Mississippi would let him get a learner's permit at 15 and a half if he had a place to live and a job. So being that we were in an RV park, then yes, he had a place to live. He had a local address. Well, then the RV park hired him on part time, which he worked maybe 10 hours a week, picking up trash and raking leaves and raking rocks and helping them out with their maintenance crew. And so therefore he had a job. So he took all his information down to the DMV, Mississippi DMV, and they accepted all of that, and he got his permit, just no problem at all. Well, our next assignment was in Iowa. So when we went to Iowa, things were totally different. They would not let him be an adult. He had to have one of his parents as a resident of that state. Well, now, if you know anything about taxes, one of us is going to be a resident in the state, then that's going to screw up the tax home. And we weren't residents of the state. So we were kind of at a catch-22 there. So we just kept it as, he just drove, or he had to drive with one of us on his learner's permit. So the crazy part of this all is that, so we decided that since he already had a Mississippi driver's license or learner's permit, and my next assignment was in Florida, we actually stopped in Tupelo, Mississippi. My son went in and used the same address that was on his learner's permit, and they actually let him take the driving test, and he passed, and he got in the Mustang, and we went on down the road, and he with a Mississippi driver's license, and he had the Mississippi driver's license until he moved to Washington. And whenever he moved to Washington when he was 18, then he gave up his Mississippi driver's license for a Washington driver's license. So yeah, we call that drive me crazy, because that's really the one thing about homeschool that really drove us crazy, was trying to get his driver's license. I hope this helps y'all, and we'll see you next week. Bye.